be here today, and those were really kind for you to set us up like that. And mentorship is of personal importance to me because it's allowed me to excel in a sport, to start a business, to change careers, and to explore my passions and capabilities to navigate a brand new to me career within financial services and explore different parts of that, both in lending and leading and in different countries. But now I'm more on the other side of the table and providing some mentorship engagement with bright young things across RBC and our communities is honestly the highlight of my day every time it happens. And I'm not alone in this. We are joined today by three incredible women who have lots of experiences with mentorship, framing it from a whole bunch of different perspectives. So together, we're going to walk through and unpack some of those experiences and how it can help impact our careers and outlook on a go-forward basis. So our first panelist that it's my pleasure to introduce is Mccomb. Caitlin is passionate about community engagement and program development that positions women for prosperous social and economic growth. She's also the program and communications manager at Ashenabeg Outreach, a group that helps build processes and tools that will position current and future First Nation, Métis, and Inuit generations as prosperous and strategic leaders in Canada's future. Most recently, Caitlin's been working on building and developing Ashenabeg Outreach's Indigenous Tech Mentorship Program. So spot on our topic today. And this program is intended to train and place individuals into entry-level tech positions. So thanks for joining us, Caitlin. Next up, I'm going to introduce, although I'm not seeing her here, Renata Rusianak. Is she here?
She's trying to log in, so we're working on that. Yes.
Fair. Well, when she logs in, you're going to love her because she's got so much diversity of experience behind her. Renata is a founder of her own enterprise, Green Horseshoe Solutions, which is a brand builder. And she's able to do that because she's leveraging her background of HR, marketing, communications, and corporate social responsibility so that she's able to bring this all together for authentic storytelling for people, products, and social governance of enterprises. She's got over 20 years experience that was maybe kicked off just like Caitlin with post-secondary experiences both in the US and here in KW, in Renata's case at the University of W. And last, but by no means least, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Mansi Baxi. Mansi is a software engineer who is all about community, tech, and people. As a volunteer lead instructor and mentor with Canada Learning Code, Mansi delivers accessible digital literacy workshops. She's a community ambassador with WIT-World, where she oversees community engagement by providing support and resources to members in the software engineering domain, in addition to leading the monthly Ask Me Anythings with her employer, Manulife. So thanks for joining us, Mansi. And I'm going to first pass the ball over to you because you were a mentee in these WCT mentor circles, right? And so I was thinking in the first instance, you could tell us all about that experience and how it's impacted you.
Yeah, definitely. So before I get started and talk about my experience with WCT, I want to take a step back and maybe talk about why I decided to join and what motivated me to join the program. I am an introvert by nature. It is really difficult for me to be natural at a networking event and talk to people, network, and build relationships in that manner. So one of the parts of networking is also reaching out to people for coffee chats and asking them to whether they want to be mentoring you formally or informally, right? So that was something that I was really scared to do. So when I found out about WCT's program, it was a structured program. I didn't have to go out and talk to people or ask them for coffee chats or anything. They had structured it in a nice way. So we had 3 streams: early careers, mid careers, and senior levels. We were all divided into groups of 6 people or so, mentees, and then we had 1 or 2 mentors per group. So a format like that really worked well for me. So when I joined the program, we were, I think, about 6 people in the group. Renata was our mentor, and it really helped me gain a lot of confidence, not only in the way I talk to my peers in my day-to-day life, but in general as well, understanding, getting to know, what Renata would think about a question that I would have, not only from her perspective, but also to know from a peer perspective as well. When I was part of that group, knowing everyone's perspective and learning more about what they would do in this situation really helped me.
That sounds incredible. So how is it that you came to here? Remind me of how you heard about the WCT mentorship circles in the first instance?
I am very active on online in terms of learning more about recent events that's going through within KW. So I would use Eventbrite to find about events happening. So I think I came across WCT's first event through Eventbrite when I was looking through Meetup or Eventbrite, and then I learned more about it, went to the website, learned more about the organization, and thought this is a really good organization and that I wanted to be a part of it.
And I think the circles are all the more successful because of your involvement. Thanks, Nancy. And Renata, you were able to get on and join us. Thank you so much. We shared your bio, and but what we didn't share is that, and Nancy just hit on a little bit here, that just like her, you were recently, last year even, involved in these WCT mentorship circles. But in your case, you were a mentee. And previous in your life, you've also been a mentor. And I'm wondering what you've taken away from both of those sides of the equation and both sides of the table.
Absolutely. And sorry for the technical difficulties. I've probably given Adele a heart attack. Sorry, Adele. But I've been able to log in now. And what I will say is, when the WCT Mentorship Circle program first got started, I actually raised my hand and said, I would love to be mentored by someone. And I think that that's sometimes like the first approach that people take is, oh yeah, I could really benefit from some mentorship. And I put through my application, worked with Cheryl Petrosevic on which area I would fall best into. And, at the end of it, there was an imbalance of mentors and mentees. And it was Cheryl who actually opened my eyes to realize, Renata, I think you'd be a really good mentor for early stage career women. And so let's explore that opportunity. And so I have, in the first program, cohort, let's call it, of the mentorship circles, I was able to do that. And in the second, I was able to then take the seat of the mentee and learn in that position as well. And I think, what that has meant to me, and what I think others would agree, is that there's always this two-way benefit to mentorship that you don't even really realize is happening. And you get just as much out of mentoring as you do as a mentee. And the opportunity to mentor a group of young women, and Menzie was in my group that first time, it makes you think about your own career choices. And we talked about some advice and some direction. And I was thinking, okay, this is great conversation. I'm learning from them, they're learning from me. But it really made me evaluate, am I actually taking my own advice? Am I implementing some of the things that we spoke about? And that to me was a moment of, oh, right, I actually do need to make that investment in myself as well as make it into others. And I think the other piece of it that was really a big moment for me was this idea of realizing that mentors come in many different shapes and many different places. And you may have one mentor in your life that's very much about your go-to for financial, or your career mentor, or someone that you really look up to or aspire to be like in more of the family arena of your life. And Rebecca, you liken this to this idea of your own board of directors, and Bardish on the last talked about your board of advisors, sort of the same idea. And you're really shaped by these people around you. And it's not necessarily one, and it's not necessarily a formalized mentorship relationship. They can be informal as well, but just these opportunities to learn are ever present. And, those were certainly takeaways for me from the mentorship side and the mentee side that really kind of came together for the full effect of mentoring.
I love it. So I'm hearing a couple of things here, that there's maybe greater gifts than on the receiving end, being a mentor, than at first blush one would expect. And it's helping you think through, what advice would I give my younger self? Or what do I know now that I wish I knew then? And how do I think about leadership or work-life balance, or stating one's ambition, or some of these challenges that women can be faced with? And the second thing I'm hearing from you, Renata, is your own personal board of directors. Every person's perspective is going to be a little different. And I sometimes liken advice and insight to different clothes. They can all be beautiful, but what's going to fit me and my own person in the best way? And so having that diversity of perspectives can really enrich you as a mentee as well. That's awesome. Caitlin, I'm coming at you now. So you've part of your work is centered on this formal mentor program with Ashnabeg Outreach. And so you've maybe got yet another perspective. And so from that, formal organizational component, albeit focused on tech, but what do you see are some of the systemic benefits, perhaps, to a community group or a business in setting up some sort of mentoring program? And what advice would you give us if we're looking at implementing something in our own shops?
Yeah, I think as everyone's kind of touched on, there's so many benefits to mentoring, both from the mentor and mentee side. And I think that's something we've really tried to capture in the build of our program, is this idea, specifically with Indigenous communities across the country. We're filling employment gaps that we've heard are huge, especially with COVID. Everything's gone remote. So a lot of tech companies are experiencing what they've told us is brain drain. So people can go from UW and they can work remotely in Silicon Valley, make double the pay, and be from anywhere. But we have all these positions in great companies locally that really are in need of really good talent. And so we're building a program around trying to give opportunities for Indigenous people to get the skills they need and come together and work with companies. So kind of our job is working on the mentee side, working with mentees, fostering kind of a safe environment where they feel welcome and can ask questions with their mentors, but also on the mentor side and really working with companies on developing retention programs and hiring programs and internships, because that kind of physical piece of getting people jobs is really important to us. But it's really that career focused mentorship alongside, which I'll talk about a bit later, this tutoring idea too, and mentors coming in different forms, but that career advice centered mentorship that'll give people opportunities to explore where they want to take their skills. Even as you're learning, for us, for example, it's currently HTML, JavaScript, and Python. So as you're learning technical skills, you might be thinking, well, hey, where can I actually apply this? It's the same kind of things I experienced taking math classes in high school. I was like, well, what good is this to me? What am I going to do with it? So I think that's where some of the mentorship and career advice is really, really essential and moving careers forward and figuring out what it is you want to do. And with that, the skill set you're learning.
Got it. So it's incredibly helpful. So it can help the mentees then can connect the dots from the technical skill set to the broader concepts. But can we just unpack that a little bit more, Caitlin? What do you, when you're selecting folks to be mentors in this program, what do you look for?
Yeah, we don't necessarily look for someone who maybe has the highest paid position or the most experience in the field. It's more so people that are looking to get involved in the community, but also kind of share their experience and expertise. And we found a lot of people in tech companies are very, very willing to do that, both from kind of the top-down approach where the companies are very willing to have their employees partake in mentorship programs, because as we've discussed, it's very mutually beneficial for that self-reflection and personal growth as an employee. But also people want to share their mistakes they've made and what they've overcome, because I think that's how potentially others can avoid making the same mistakes. Whether you listen or not, that always happens, but we all make mistakes. But I mean, I think it's such a great way to make that connection and network, especially in an age now of having to do everything virtually, like this wonderful event. Being able to take a virtual approach to it is something we're all learning and trying to still be able to foster those really meaningful, true connections in a safe way for everyone.
I love it. And from an RBC perspective, what we've seen is when we have some of these mentorship programs, it can really help from an inclusivity perspective and help some diverse candidates feel a little more welcomed and connected, and give them a bit more of the network so that they can learn from others and progress in their careers in a way that if perhaps they're feeling as an outsider, it's not obvious in the first blush. So it's exciting to hear what you're doing for our Indigenous community partners within that world. So, okay, I'm coming back to you, Mancy. You have outlined all these wonderful benefits and how being a mentee has helped you gain confidence and exposure to a really cool group of peers and mentors and lots of learning there. But so if we rewind that tape, before you found the WCT mentor program, something maybe was sparking in you. There's a reason you were looking for that. So I'm wondering, for those listening to us today and joining, what would be those signs and symptoms that they should be searching their own person for to think, hey, mentorship could help with this?
For sure. So for me, whenever I would go into, say, a one-on-one with my manager, or apply for a new job or something like that, I would do an intensive research. I would over research a lot online, and I learned that that's not the right way of doing things. You need people that you can ask questions, who you can reach out to if you have any questions, and get advice on. So for me, that was the biggest point in terms of not knowing who to reach out to even. Yes, your manager could be, when you're starting out new, your mentor in a way, but they are limited in terms of how they can mentor you. And it also depends on, case by case basis. So for me, having people, even outside of my team, having that third party perspective to give me, whether it's within the company or outside the company, was something very important. And I was lacking that in my life, before, I would say, joining the WCT program. And really also the second point would be knowing what other peers are doing at the same time. I would do a lot of comparison with us. It's not a healthy way to go about in your career, comparing, but I would always think about, am I doing things the right way? Am I falling behind, or do I have the right pace in my career? So having all of those questions, and yes, there were my team members, there were people that I've worked with in the past who I could reach out to and ask, but I was still I didn't have that well-rounded connection and network of people, especially I'm new to Canada. I came here about 5 years ago. So for me, not even having that base where you've lived all your life, right? That was missing a lot. So for me, networking was really important. So I would say if you are new to Canada or even new to the area and looking and missing, people that you could ask questions to or reach out to, or even, having a network of peers uh, who you can learn from with even just casual conversations. It doesn't have to be super serious, but picking things up when you're talking to someone, things like that. If you're missing something like that, I would highly suggest those people to either get involved with a mentorship program like WCT, or if you're confident enough, unlike me, reach out to people for coffee chats and learn more about their journey, their careers, and things like that.
Awesome. That's some great advice. And I would say you're coming across as awfully confident here. So, well done. But what I'm hearing is, in terms of these signs and symptoms that maybe it's time to think about a mentor, from what you said, I heard there was maybe not self-doubt, but some questions there. Hey, how am I benchmarking to my peer group? There was an opportunity to build out your network more. And I'm hearing from your story that maybe you were looking for things in the wrong place. And so a manager may not necessarily be a leader, and a leader may not necessarily be a mentor. And so you started to realize there's things I can't get from this person, and I sure as heck can't get from Google. But you had the resilience there to figure out where can you get it, and you were getting it from that real life mentorship experience. So good for you, Mansi. That's awesome. Okay, Renata, I'm laser gaze to you here. You've had, as you hit on at the beginning, a variety of mentorship relationships, both as a mentee and a mentor. And, what would you say when you enter into those relationships allows them to be set up for the greatest chance of success? And, so maybe another part of that question is, how do you know when it's time to seek out a new perspective that perhaps your current mentor can't afford?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that for a relationship in any respect, this is not just specific to mentoring. This is across life. Relationships, let's call it. A relationship needs to be very open, very honest, and there needs to be mutual understanding, right? It's kind of like, if you compare it to a young couple that's starting to date and they're getting to know each other a little bit, and they want to come to some common ground, right? Like, you need to know things about whether, that person would like to have children one day, and if that's a goal of yours, and is there an alignment? So I think that the best way to set up these mentorship relationships for success is to be thinking about those things from the start. And it doesn't necessarily need to be too formal, although some programs are a little bit more formal. But, I've even seen, instances where there's these kind of like mentoring contracts, right? Where it's an opportunity for people to understand, let's look at this as a 1-year commitment for both of us to make some advancement in these areas, right? And it's about being very specific to what that looks like, to set things up for success. If there's those conversations happening on a regular cadence, whether it's, we're going to check in once a month, or we're going to, however the agreement is set up, there should be progress between those conversations happening. And you can almost, I'll say, chart that or manage that progression as you're going along through conversation. And if you have that open and honest dialogue with your mentor, I don't really see, I would say that there would be very little chance that there's a misalignment in that one person thinks, oh, this relationship is delivering in spades, and the other person thinks this isn't working at all. Because there's those regular touch points and things are progressing that way, I think there'll be like a natural evolution of when it's time to bring other perspectives to the table. So whether that's, there's an area that you're working with your mentor on that is outside of your mentor's wheelhouse. Your mentor is probably quick to say, you know what, I actually don't have specific knowledge about this very intricate maybe area of tax or audit or something, but they will know exactly who to point you to have that conversation. And then those things almost act as a natural succession plan to what your next mentoring opportunity might look like. That's kind of how I would see things being set up for success by having those, very kind of clear, articulated conversations at the front end, keeping those going throughout the throughout the term of the relationship, and then honestly coming to a very natural close. Or it may be, you know what, we both are getting a lot out of this and we need more time. So let's do this longer term, right? I think those are all natural evolutions of what a mentorship relationship can look like.
I love it. There's a couple of jewels there that you shared, and let's just double click on those. This idea of the open and honest, so a transparent communication. But, I think there's something really powerful as well of having that mentorship contract. So right at the get-go, here's the objectives that we're both trying to get out of this conversation. And maybe it's a 1-year renewable, or maybe it's a 1 or 2 conversations only. I love that, but setting out clear goals so that here's what success would look like. I want to better understand how to broaden my career, or I want to better understand how to improve my communication skills. Those are very clear goals and hurdles for success. And it made me think, in hearing you speak, Renata, that there's a difference between friendship and mentorship. Does that something that resonates with you? There's overlap, but differences.
Yeah, absolutely. It's absolutely true. There are people in your life who are friends that you are inspired by, that you give each other inspiration and support. But when it comes to these very specific goals that you have, whether it's, how do I go from being a manager to a director level, and what are the things that I need to be working on? If your friend hasn't had that experience, they're probably not the best person to support you in that. But a mentor is a really great person to support you in that. And then it kind of gets even further down this pipe of, is that mentor going to become a sponsor, right? Are they going to be one that's actually promoting you into that next phase of your career?
Well, maybe we can expand upon that, because you've hit on a big word here in terms of sponsorship. So I wonder, Renata, Caitlin, Mancy, if you wanted to expand on that, do you have a view here? What is the difference between a sponsor, a mentor, and a supporter?
I do have a view. And for me, it was actually learning what the difference was first between mentor and sponsor, because I think sometimes they can be used interchangeably. And it was through a conversation, just leading up to this event, that we started to explore that. And for me, it was like, oh, I want to understand this, and I want to unravel this a little bit more. And what I take from it is that you're a person that moves into a sponsorship position for you is that career advocate. They are the person that is sharing through their social media, making connections for you that are going to actually further your career, speaking specifically to what you have demonstrated, either in a role or through your conversations or the steps that you have taken to further your career. So they are really this person that is, I'll say, almost like your endorsement. They are recommending you for this next chapter in your career and putting their name beside your name. So it's really, I think, that next level, whereas mentorship can evolve into that piece of things. But mentorship is really a little bit more of the how-to conversation, right? And if it's this idea of how do I be moved from this sort of managerial level to a director level, it's having those conversations of ideas to implement, things to try that will likely land you into your next next stage of your career or whatever area it is that you're looking for that mentorship. But I'd welcome other perspectives from the group as well.
Caitlin or Mancy, is this one you want to jump in on?
It's not something we've focused so much on, but definitely something I'd say to be a natural evolution of our program, kind of getting to those, I think they're more like they're that deeper relationship, right? That kind of next level of mentorship and taking it to that next level. So it's something that we hope to incorporate in, but it's not quite at the program at this current moment.
But you do have different roles, maybe not of a sponsor, but you hit on it just briefly before, Caitlin, this idea, there's tutors, there's other roles than mentors. Is that something you could elaborate upon?
Yeah, I'll take a little step back. I'll do a little kind of brief overview of our program. So what we're building, as I said, it's about filling these entry-level positions, but also sticking with our mentees for their promotion and that next promotion, kind of that lifelong learning. So what we're doing is kind of breaking down barriers to access of education and taking that 4-year degree, which I'll take a little sidetrack here. I'm sure you guys have watched cooking shows and you talk about the Caesar salad or the deconstructed Caesar salad. That's a metaphor we use. So you have all the different pieces of it and it all comes together. So we're looking at maybe a 4-year education, but maybe that's going to be over 30 years of your life. So what is it we need to give our mentees to get that first job? Because when you do a 4-year degree, you're kind of getting that basic background for your career so that you can adapt and change as things grow. But what does it look like to give people just in time education what they need for that first job? It's a little bit more accessible, less intimidating, and it can kind of work around people's schedules better. So we've set it up in a way that it can be accessed for people both living remotely and locally. We're working right now on kind of breaking down internet barriers and figuring out exactly how that's going to work in remote communities. But essentially what we have is 3 main roles. So on our side at Anishinaabe Outreach, we have navigators. So the navigator is kind of navigator is the best way to describe it. They'll navigate you through the program. They're there for questions just in time for what you need to do next. So figuring out, okay, is it math that we're missing? Is there language that we're missing that we need to kind of start on first? Computer safety, internet safety, whatever the case may be, giving people the balance they need to enter into the program. Or maybe they have all of those skills and they've already done some coding background and we can place them right into one of our courses. So that's on the Anishinaabe Outreach side. We'll work with the companies and setting people up. But then we have tutors. So the University of Waterloo, I think it was almost like 2 hours after the email went out about the program, we had 50 PhD level and staff wanting to jump on board as tutors. So they're volunteered their time. I think it's an easy sell for educational institutions, and we're excited to bring others on board as we grow and evolve. But basically, the courses we have are self-guided. They're through the University of Waterloo, but there's times when you get stuck and it gets really frustrating. And so as great as courses are, or you can look at other resources online, sometimes you need that one-on-one connection to walk you through the problem and say, hey, where am I going wrong? And so there's that mentorship piece there, kind of structured under tutoring and to the specific technical skills. But then once we have mentees that have kind of gone through that process, maybe have a course or 2 under their belt, we'll set them up with a mentor in something they seem to be interested in. So this is where we're working with local tech companies and recruiting mentors who are at that point in their career wanting to be a mentor, and hopefully setting up them with mentees that are have the same interests. But like you said, this is why we're doing more of a formal approach, and we are doing a contract in terms of, hey, let's set this out for whatever the meeting number is. Maybe it's 8 meetings initially. It can have an expansion, it can be less, but let's set out goals. What are the things you're interested in? How can we match you with a mentor that's going to kind of bring out those questions and those natural conversations? So yeah, those are our 3 pieces.
I love it. And so I'm hearing about a navigator who is helping to identify capability gaps. I'm hearing about a tutor who is really, in the weeds, technical specific skill set. And layered on top of that is the mentor relationship, which is helping to bring a broader perspective to tie it all together. And then we're not coming back to what Renata was talking about with the sponsorship. It's somebody in a position of power or impact or influence who can, in a career setting, help promote you, perhaps behind the scenes, not literally give you the promotion, but help advocate for you. I'm thinking about my previous world as an equestrian and how this would all come together. You know, the navigator in equestrian sport who's helping me identify gaps could well be a judge the day, you know, that we're not winning in our sport and we find out the reasons why. The tutor is my technical coach who's helping me to improve within my sport. My mentor is perhaps my coach's coach or somebody who can share about what it is to be on that Olympic team that I'm aspiring to. And then a sponsor, well, heck, that's somebody who can actually help literally sponsor, like Nike does for some of our professional athletes, help sponsor and subsidize so that you can avail yourselves of these greater opportunities. And they may well be sort of behind the scenes and never front and center and part of the branding. But it's exciting to think about those different roles and how it can help us develop in whatever realm we find ourselves.
I think it's back to that board of directors idea, this idea that we have multiple people for multiple different things. And I think it's important to embrace that and roll with it.
I love it. I love it. In my experience, you know, I don't have children. And so when these, you know, young women ask me about managing work-life balance with childcare, it's not something I can speak to. And so I'm always happy to pass them on to the, you know, make a recommendation as to where they can go to explore that, because can't be all things to all people. Mancy, one of the things when we were speaking in anticipation of today, you spoke as to how impactful it was, not just the mentor component, but having that peer group. And in keeping with that theme of board of directors and different roles, how does that peer mentorship come to life for you?
So for our group, I think we hit it really well with the first group that we had at WCT, and we are still in touch. The program was done a couple months ago, and we are still in touch. We do meet. We try to meet on a monthly or 2-month basis, and we talk about what's going on in our careers, if we need help with anything, or just stay in touch in terms of giving each other an update of what's happening. It could be as casual of a conversation as we want it to be, or talk about our careers, but having those people like we've touched upon on board of directors is really important. And it's outside the structure of WCT. What I've found is I can reach out to any of those people if I have any questions, and if I know that, okay, hey, she's great at XYZ, and I can reach out to her for that if I have any questions for, and even getting different perspectives. I think Rebecca, you mentioned about getting everyone's perspective, but taking the pieces out that really support you or what you are comfortable with doing. That's really important. But expanding your thought of process and learning more about different perspective, it's very helpful. And also sometimes you can be just sitting with having two people talk about one person asking one person talking about their perspective, and then things that you might have not even thought about. So I think there is a lot of learning when it comes to the peer-to-peer component, not only from a learning perspective, but also you can contribute your ideas and help someone else. So I would say it also helps you form a type of a friendship as well. So very helpful to have not only mentors, but to have that peer-to-peer connection and those board of directors.
I love it, because there is that friendship component, right? If you're peers, but in different parts of an organization, or even in different organizations, any hint of competitiveness is removed, and you can help one another brainstorm how better to, hey, I've got this amazing mentorship opportunity coming up. How should I be asking Caitlin about stating my ambition? And you can brainstorm it together and develop in a really safe space some help and perspective on each other's journeys. That sounds like a hoot. I wanted to come back, Renata, to something that you hit on with this idea of a mentoring contract. And I wanted to unpack that a little bit more. You know, whose responsibility is a mentoring relationship? Who owns that agenda and who owns pushing the conversation forward? I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we had talked about sharing some resources and links in this session, which I'm happy to do in the chat as well. I, having looked at a number of different companies and internally making recommendations on mentorship programs, there has to be a driver, and that driver is you. You are driving your own career, right? And I think that sometimes there's this expectation of, you know, okay, well, I'll get a mentor and then all of a sudden these things will happen and I will come out of this shaped differently in one way or another, but I'm not exactly sure what that looks like. So we try to bring it back to this, I'll say, more fundamental idea of, if you have an interest in exploring mentorship, then you are that driver. You are driving your own career, and you can do that with the support of a mentor or many mentors, however the case may be. And it really, I think, makes this, the fundamental responsibilities of a mentee is really to think about, valuing that time and making sure there is a value set forward. Doing a little bit of your own pre-work, thinking about what is that next step that I want to accomplish in my career or in my personal life. What is that next step? And how am I going to align with a mentor that can help me in getting there? Not do the work for you, but help you in getting there. And I think that, when it comes to this idea of structuring the conversation or the contract, there are so many resources that kind of outline, the mentor responsibilities are these, and the mentee responsibilities are these, and having those conversations so there's no ambiguity, even when it comes to something as simple as logistically, whose responsibility is it to set the meeting and make sure that there's the right contact information and, be accountable, bring forward an agenda to this meeting. And I would say that usually that falls more into the mentee camp. So it's that making sure that there's that valuable time happening together means setting things up successfully to do so. The logistics of it, the content or the agenda of what you're looking to do and to have. So I'm hoping that gets a little bit to your question there. But I will also say, and Manzi, you were reminding me of this sort of the WCT mentorship experience that we had together. I actually likened it recently to someone by saying, when you have a circle of people, you have a number of people to give perspective, right? And so it wasn't necessarily like, the mentor mentee. I think we all played those two parts equally in different parts of the conversation. And I likened it to a friend of mine as, on Dragon's Den, when someone gets a deal and they got a deal with one of the dragons and they're really pumped about that. And then two of the other dragons kind of, collude and decide, yes, okay, we're going to actually offer you, both of us, for these specific reasons to better your business. So I almost felt like it was that. It was like having all the dragons, not that I'm comparing us to dragons, but I am, having all of that input in one place and being able to access the talent that every person brought to that conversation. And that's what to me stuck out as making it such a fantastic experience in that way.
I love it. So really in the group setting, a real collaborative mutual, like a collaborative brainstorming to help one another. And there's not one right person in the room, but rather the answers in the room, and we'll discover it together. And that stands maybe in contrast if we think about a one-on-one mentor-mentee relationship, where what I was hearing, Renata, is there is a real onus on that mentee to demonstrate how much she values the time of the mentor by thinking ahead of time. Here's the kind of topics I'd like to talk about today, or here's the 2 questions I want to explore in the 30 minutes we have together. And a real benefit, while intimidating, having a bit of a mentor contract can set out those roles and responsibilities clearly ahead of the time, so no one's feeling a bit roughshod about how it's playing out.
Absolutely. And there's almost from those conversations, you should come out with some actions, right? And those actions may be like homework. Okay, I'm going to reach out to 3 people in my network and discuss my business or my development or whatever that case may be. But it should come out just like, a productive meeting in a workplace. You're coming out with a path forward, and then it's with you to actually make those steps happen for your path forward.
I love it. Very clearly that call to action. We're going to circle back to that in this discussion in a moment. But before we do, Caitlin, I wanted to call on you. We've spoken here, about the formal mentor program that you're facilitating with your organization, but we've also spoken about that board of directors, and perhaps there's room here to explore the difference between informal and formal mentorship. Something that maybe doesn't have a contract with it or a prescribed agenda. Is that something you could speak to and explore for us?
Yeah, I think it's so important. Like, there's so much value in both. I feel like your informal mentors almost will come naturally in your life. It depends. I know for me personally, tech isn't my background, but I've found myself here and I'm super excited about it and I love as you mentioned in my bio, I like the program development. So that's where I thrive. But there's times, it's kind of a funny side. I was speaking to pretty high up in a tech company and I started talking about Java, and they're like, wait, do you mean JavaScript? Those are 2 different things. I was like, well, the more you know, right? Like, I think it's just, I had no idea that they were totally different, but I think it's just those formal and informal kind of they'll come naturally. The ones who have been the most, I'd say, influential in my life are kind of my informal mentors. The ones who kind of maybe take on potentially that sponsorship role, I found for me, has come from a more informal relationship, but I don't know that that's necessarily the same across the board for everyone. Of course, everyone's experience is different, but with formal mentorship, we're kind of trying to hone in on those questions, like coming prepared to meetings, putting that responsibility on the mentees to dedicate the time and say, hey, life comes up, but you're going to talk to the mentee. If you're not going to make your meeting, make sure you're giving heads up, kind of those real life experiences that you need to prepare on. We talk a lot about at AO on like hand-ups versus handouts, and this idea of putting into it you'll get out what you put in. And I think it's something we've heard all the time and you kind of brush it off, but it's so true. Really, in mentorship, it's a huge component. If you just come to the meetings and show up, you're probably not going to get as much out of it as if you prepare and you have questions and you really engage and try and foster that relationship with your mentor. I'm sure you'll end up coming out of it with a lot more.
I love that. There is a great distinction between handout and hand up. And, your return on investment is about what you put in terms of the investment. I sometimes joke that, a mentor relationship, it's not summer camp. It doesn't happen to you when you get to do all these activities. It's more an opportunity. And so how are you going to explore that and get the most out of it? And so changing the way of thinking about your own personal responsibilities as a mentee and how you want to explore this with the person can be incredibly rewarding. So we're coming towards an end here. And so I thought maybe a quick rapid fire round. And Mancy, let's start with you. Briefly, thinking about Renata's component here about action items from a meeting, what would you want our listeners or participants today? What is the call to action that you'd want to share with them?
Yes. So for today, I would say you would have, you've heard to all four of us and talk about, us talking about our perspectives. But think about one thing that resonated really well with you, whether it's the informal mentorship part of things or formal mentorship part of things, and take an action. Whether you want to be part of WCT or some other formal mentorship program, or want to reach out to someone for coffee chat, and this gave you some push or the confidence that you probably needed. So take an action based on what resonated well with you today. That would be my one thing.
Awesome. Be brave and take action. I love it. What about you, Caitlin? What's your call to action?
Yeah, I think from those are all so true. And I think part of that is finding something, like Manzi said, that resonates with you and taking action on it. So in terms of what I spoke to, that could be, we are looking for mentors and mentees. If you have interest in participating, you can reach out to me through LinkedIn, through my email, which is it's Caitlin@aocan.org, and I can talk to you about any of those opportunities if you're a company or looking for opportunities to get involved. But I think it is just really think about what your goals are. I think once you think what your goals are, you can take action on how to achieve them, and whether mentorship is a essential component to that, taking that step forward and really highlighting what you want to get out of the relationship, I think will be really helpful.
Awesome. So building on Mancy's call of being brave, you're saying, hey, we got a place for you guys to be brave. Come pitch in at AO. Exactly. And the second part there was this self-assessment and knowing, hey, what are my goals and how could I grow with that? Renata, last comment to you here. Call to action.
I would have to say that everyone can be a mentor to someone else. And I think it's really easy to get caught up in this sort of imposter syndrome of, I'm not far enough along in my career to be a mentor, or I haven't got the expertise in this particular area. But you do have, just by being you, a unique skill set, background, education, experience, and you have something to offer someone else. So my call to action would be, as much as you're thinking about mentoring and how to maybe look at a relationship for that as yourself in getting a mentor, look at it also as who you could provide mentorship to, because that's the only way that all of this works. Is if there's enough people that raise a hand to say, yes, I will mentor someone else who's, whether it's earlier in a career or starting their education down the same path or any of those things. Just think about how you can contribute to both sides of the cycle.
I love it. You have two hands. One can receive and one can give. And there's such gifts to be blessed with on both sides of that. So great call to action, Renata. Caitlin, Mancy, Renata, you gals have been stellar. I came into this with a real positive bias about mentorship, but hearing from the three of you, and as we unpacked it a little bit more, has really lit a fire under me to double down in this place in my professional life and my personal life. So thank you for that. I also want to thank WCT's Waterloo chapter for inviting me and RBC to be part of such an awesome event, and getting to know you three and the working group of WCT has been incredibly enriching. So what a way to celebrate International Women's Day. And, we've all got a call to action here to be brave, figure out what our goals are, and help other people. And I think, pulling these all together, we've got some really great calls to action to make a difference. So thank you for that. And I think now, I'm a little fuzzy on timing, but I think we're going to be moving shortly into some messaging from special guests and some singer-songwriters. But first, over to you.
I can help you out with that, Rebecca. Awesome job. What an amazing panel. I'm doing these virtual high fives now because it just makes the most sense. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Way to go, ladies. Oh, well, here we go. Thanks to all the moderators and panelists from the morning conversations. What an incredible IWDAM. And we have more to come, Waterloo region. Allow me to set this afternoon up for you. At 1 p.m., we have a gold star panel of some of the big change makers in our community, 4 female tech CEOs. So make sure you tune in for that. 2:15, we're going to have an honest and real conversation about recognizing women making a difference in our community. I hope you'll tune in for that. And then our final panel will spotlight women who are choosing to challenge, with a special shout out to Eden Hennessy, a woman I first met at the Women's March. And I've always admired her pump up skills. So she's going to be great. Please share your thoughts on our discussion board, as well as tweet us at WCT_WR. Now, over the next hour, we'll be sharing thoughts and affirmations, thanking our community through a series of video vignettes. This year's been a wild one. In fact, I was thinking back, the last events I attended in person last year were all IWD events. So I sort of ended my community involvement where I actually got to be with people in rooms with IWD. And here we are celebrating all the amazing women. Just shows how innovative our community is and how we pivot fast to make things happen. You're also going to see some interesting entertainment and musical interludes that highlight women and the organizations who choose to challenge gender bias and inequity. You know, I also encourage you to check out the links on our platform in the agenda for the escape room, which is super fun. And there's also a boot camp. We can all get our blood pumping a little bit, right? That puts us in a better mindset. We've heard a lot about that throughout this morning. Either of these activities can be accessed at this time of day or a little bit later. And on the dashboard, you're also going to be able to check out the KW Community Foundation Fund for Gender Equality and donate if you can. And please don't forget to sign into this platform. I started to sign into the platform. It takes a little time because you want to show the places that you've worked and things like that so they can do this incredible map, but it's going to be so worth it. If we have 200 women in our community or more, showcase where they are and what they do, it's going to be an awesome IWD map and something we can actually look at and try to grow over the next several years as we look for equality in this community. Now, someone DM'd me about my shirt, so I just thought I'd show it off here. I know, Sherry, you're around. Some people collect concert shirts. I collect feminist shirts when I go to conferences. I've got an awesome Ruthless one for, of course, RGB. And I've also got a feminist shirt that says, "This is what a feminist looks like," from the Women's March. But this one came to me at Women Deliver. It's a conference that happens every 4 years. And the last conference actually happened in Vancouver. And the idea behind that was the power to change. And I love that idea. And I think, you know, we've really done a great job, Sherry, your team, that Profound Impact, the steering committee, you've done such a great job of showing that, you know, we as women have power to change this community, and we're seeing it happen today. So thank you. Hats off to you. You're amazing.
Thank you.
And here's what I know for sure: by sharing our stories and mentoring others, we can choose to challenge. So I'm thinking of all you amazing women out there today, and I'm wishing you an awesome International Women's Day. I hope you have an awesome afternoon. I'll be tuning in, but I get to sit back and relax. Sherry, you're going to be back with Mike Farwell from 570 News at 1 o'clock. He's just signing off right now, I think, and he'll be back on with you at 1 o'clock. So thank you so much for asking me to be here. It's been my pleasure. IWD out to all the women in our community.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you very much for emceeing our morning session. And it's been a great day, kind of filled my mind with so much, and lots of discussions on the discussion board. So please circle back. You can scroll down and there. And I just want to tell everyone, we've raised over $150 so far in our donation to the Kitchener Waterloo Foundation Fund. So thank you very much. I think Eric's set to go for the vignettes and the video. So thank you again, Melissa. We'll see everybody else after the vignettes. Stay for these because they're very powerful stories honoring our heroes, our community heroes. There's some musical interludes there. And as Melissa said, the escape room and the boot camp, those are things you might want to do on the side. But please, come back and join us this afternoon. Over to you, Eric.